A millionaire makes a cruel decision to abandon her baby on a deserted road. In the silence of the night, only a dog appears, a witness to the merciless act. With unexplainable determination, it becomes the protector of the defenseless child. What the dog does next defies all expectations and warms even the coldest hearts. The dense fog covered the streets of Pinewood Valley like a protective cloak, as Emily walked hurriedly along the isolated trail of the Blue Ridge Mountains. Her hesitant steps and broken heart revealed the weight of the decision she was about to make. In her arms, little Ethan slept peacefully, unaware of the turmoil of emotions consuming his mother. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give it a like. Tell us which city you're watching us from. We continue. Emily's silent tears mingled with the fine drizzle falling on that fateful night. She knew she had no choice, or at least that's what her tormented heart told her. The recent events in her life had revealed secrets so deep and frightening that she believed she was protecting her son by making this desperate choice. "Forgive me, my love," she whispered, carefully placing the baby under a century-old tree, wrapped in warm blankets and protected from the moisture. "One day, you'll understand that I did this to protect you." Little did Emily know that, hidden in the shadows of the forest, a majestic golden-haired dog was watching the scene intently. Guardian, as he would later be known, was no ordinary animal. His eyes shone with ancient wisdom, and his presence in the mountains was no mere coincidence. As soon as Emily disappeared into the mist, Guardian silently approached the baby. With surprising gentleness, he picked up the bundle of blankets with his teeth and began to follow a specific path through the mountains, as if following an invisible map etched in his memory. On the other side of town, Sarah and Michael were keeping watch on another night of sadness. The couple, who had been trying to have a child for years without success, had received yet another negative test result that afternoon. Sarah was sitting on the porch of their cozy home, watching the mist dance between the trees, when a different sound caught her attention. Guardian emerged from the darkness, preciously carrying his bundle. Sarah, realizing what it was, let out a scream that brought Michael running. The dog, with an almost human dignity, placed the baby at the couple's feet and sat down, as if waiting for them to understand his mission. It's a baby," exclaimed Sarah, taking Ethan into her arms with instant love. The little one opened his eyes at that moment, and a smile lit up his tiny face, as if recognizing that he had arrived at the right place. Michael, still stunned, noticed something extraordinary. The moment Sarah held the baby, all the plants in the garden seemed to lean towards them, and an intense floral scent filled the air, even though it wasn't flowering season. "Sarah, look!" He pointed to the flowers that were beginning to bloom spontaneously around them. It was as if nature itself was celebrating this predestined encounter. Guardian remained with the family, becoming not just a faithful protector, but a bridge between Ethan and the mysteries of the mountains that fate had chosen for him. That night, as the baby slept in the hastily prepared room, flowers sprouted in the garden out of season, and a gentle, comforting energy filled the house. What Sarah and Michael didn't yet know was that this baby, brought by the mist and the mysterious Guardian, carried with him a special gift. Ethan would be more than just their much-desired son. He would be the key to ancient secrets guarded by the Blue Ridge Mountains, secrets that would begin to reveal themselves as he grew up. The next morning, when the first rays of sun managed to pierce through the characteristic mist of Pinewood Valley, the house's garden was completely transformed. Flowers of all colors had sprouted during the night, and small forest animals curiously approached the window of the room where Ethan slept, as if paying a silent tribute to the newcomer. 10 years passed since that misty night, and Ethan grew up surrounded by the unconditional love of Sarah and Michael. The house in the Blue Ridge Mountains had become a small paradise, where extraordinary flowers bloomed all year round, and wild animals visited the garden with a frequency that intrigued the neighbors. Ethan demonstrated a unique connection with nature from his first steps. When he was sad, the plants wilted slightly. When happy, flowers bloomed instantly. Sarah and Michael learned to read their son's mood through the behavior of the garden, a secret they kept only between themselves. Guardian remained a constant and protective presence, always alert and mysteriously aware. The dog seemed to age differently from other animals. His golden coat maintained the same shine as in the first days, and his eyes carried a wisdom that sometimes made Sarah wonder about his true nature. It was on an autumn afternoon that Ethan met Oliver, a boy who had recently arrived in town. Oliver was different from the other children, quiet, observant, with a deep gaze that seemed to carry ancient secrets. The encounter happened during one of Ethan's walks through the mountains, when Guardian suddenly changed his usual route. "Can you hear them too?" Oliver asked, surprising Ethan, who was watching birds conversing among themselves. It was the first time someone other than him seemed to understand the silent language of nature. You understand what they're saying?" Ethan replied, a mixture of surprise and relief in his voice. Oliver nodded, a small smile appearing on his usually serious face. From that moment on, a deep friendship was born between the two boys. Together, they discovered that their gifts complemented each other. While Ethan could influence the growth of plants and communicate with them, Oliver could understand the thoughts of animals and sense imminent dangers. Guardian observed the boys' friendship with evident approval, guiding them in their explorations of the mountains as if following a predetermined plan. The boys began to notice strange patterns in nature, mysterious lights between the trees at night, melodious sounds that seemed to come from the rocks themselves, and a pulsating energy that grew stronger as they ventured into certain areas of the mountains. Sarah noticed the changes in Ethan. Her son had always been special, but now with Oliver's arrival, a new dimension seemed to reveal itself. The plants not only responded to his presence, they seemed to want to communicate something urgent. The garden, once a space of peace and beauty, began to manifest a noticeable restlessness. One night during dinner, an extraordinary event happened. The plants in the house began to glow softly, emitting a bluish light that pulsed like a heart. Ethan and Oliver, who was having dinner with the family that night, exchanged significant looks. "There's something we need to tell you," Ethan began, while Guardian sat between the two boys, as if endorsing the conversation. "The mountains. They're trying to show us something important." Sarah and Michael listened attentively as the boys described their discoveries in recent weeks, the mysterious lights, the inexplicable sounds, the growing sensation that something crucial was about to happen. The couple, who had always known their son was special, began to understand that Ethan's destiny was intertwined with something much greater than they could imagine. That same night, as the town slept, a solitary figure arrived in Pinewood Valley. Dr. Lisa Carter, a renowned geologist, observed the mountains with a calculating look. In her briefcase, detailed documents about unique crystal formations and inexplicable energy readings promised significant changes for the region. What no one knew was that Lisa's arrival would mark the beginning of a journey that would test not only Ethan and Oliver's special gifts, but also the bonds of love, friendship, and loyalty that united them. The Blue Ridge Mountains held millennial secrets, and the moment to reveal them was closer than anyone imagined. The morning after the revealing dinner, Ethan and Oliver decided to explore an area of the mountains that had always seemed to call to them. Guardian, more alert than usual, guided the way through the ancient trees, his golden fur reflecting the sunlight that filtered through the canopy. "Can you feel that?" Oliver asked, stopping abruptly. A gentle vibration ran through the ground beneath their feet, like a rhythmic pulse coming from the depths of the earth. Ethan nodded, noticing that the plants around them seemed to lean in the same direction, as if pointing out a path. Guardian began to sniff the air intensely, his eyes shining with an unusual light. The dog followed an almost imperceptible trail, leading the boys to an area of the mountains they had never explored before. The vegetation became denser and older, with giant ferns and luminescent mosses covering the rocks. After an hour of walking, they arrived at a rock formation that seemed ordinary at first glance. However, when Ethan approached, the surrounding plants began to glow softly, revealing a narrow entrance partially covered by vines. "This is it," Oliver whispered, his eyes wide. "The animals. They've always avoided this place. They say it's sacred." Carefully, the boys pushed aside the vines and entered the cave. The interior was surprisingly spacious, and as their eyes adjusted to the dimness, an extraordinary vision was revealed. The cave walls were covered with inscriptions that emitted their own glow, pulsing as if they were alive. In the center of the cave stood a gigantic crystal that seemed to capture and amplify the natural light entering through small fissures in the ceiling. Its surface was smooth and transparent, but inside, Colors danced like an imprisoned aurora borealis. "It's incredible," Ethan murmured, approaching the crystal. Upon touching its surface, a wave of energy coursed through his body, and visions began to appear in his mind. Ancient people tending to the mountains, smaller crystals scattered at strategic points, a delicate balance maintaining the harmony of the entire region. Oliver, in turn, began to hear ancient voices echoing off the cave walls. "Ethan, these symbols, they tell a story. They speak of chosen guardians to protect the heart of the mountains." Guardian positioned himself next to the central crystal, his form beginning to emit a soft glow that harmonized with the light of the crystal. The boys understood that it was no coincidence they had been guided here. They were part of something much bigger. As they explored the cave, they discovered small niches in the walls where smaller crystals had been stored. In some, fragments still remained, that pulsed in sync with the central crystal. The luminous inscriptions seemed to tell the story of an ancient people who protected these crystals, maintaining the natural balance of the mountains. Outside the cave, unbeknownst to the boys, sophisticated equipment at Dr. Lisa Carter's makeshift base detected inexplicable energy spikes. The geologist observed the graphs with growing interest, marking coordinates on a detailed map of the region. "It's stronger than we expected," she muttered to herself as she typed rapidly on her computer. On her screen, urgent emails from her financiers demanded immediate results. Lisa closed her eyes for a moment, the weight of her own choices and secrets heavy on her shoulders. Back in the cave, Ethan and Oliver began to notice that the crystal reacted differently to each of their presences. When Ethan approached, warm and vibrant colors danced within it. With Oliver, blue and green tones predominated, creating hypnotic patterns. "Look at this," Oliver called, pointing to a series of symbols that formed a kind of map. The inscriptions showed other points in the mountains where similar crystals were hidden, all connected by lines of energy to the central crystal. Guardian watched attentively as the boys studied the map, his eyes reflecting the wisdom of ancient ages. The dog seemed to perfectly understand the meaning of that discovery and the responsibility that now fell upon his young protégé. The afternoon was advancing when the boys finally decided to return home. They left the cave with the certainty that their lives had changed forever. They were no longer just two boys with special gifts. They were the new guardians of an ancient secret that needed to be protected. While Ethan and Oliver processed their extraordinary discovery in the cave, Pinewood Valley enthusiastically welcomed the arrival of the research team, led by Dr. Lisa Carter. The geologist, with her natural charisma and promises of sustainable development for the region, quickly gained the trust of local residents. "Our research will bring progress and jobs to the town," Lisa explained during a meeting with local businessmen. "Pinewood Valley has a unique energy potential that needs to be studied and harnessed." However, behind her professional smile, Lisa carried an immense weight. On her laptop, encrypted emails from a powerful international conglomerate made it clear that her mission was more complex than it appeared. "Remember our agreement, Dr. Carter. Your family is counting on your success," said the last message received. At Ethan's house, Sarah noticed subtle changes in her son's and guardian's behavior. The dog was more vigilant than usual, and the plants in the garden seemed restless, their leaves trembling even without wind. During breakfast, Ethan barely touched his food, his thoughts clearly distant. "Son, is everything all right?" Sarah asked, concerned. "You seem different since yesterday." Ethan exchanged a significant look with Guardian before answering. "Mom, do you believe that sometimes we're chosen for something important, even without really understanding why?" Sarah felt a shiver run down her spine. Somehow she had always known her son had a special purpose, ever since the night Guardian brought him to their door. "I believe, my love, and whatever your mission is, your father and I will always be by your side." At school, Ethan and Oliver began to notice strange events. During science class, while the teacher was talking about geology, all the crystals in the laboratory began to vibrate inexplicably. Oliver, with his heightened sensitivity, perceived the growing agitation of the animals in the region. "They're scared," Oliver whispered to Ethan during the break. "The birds, the squirrels, even the insects, they all feel that something is wrong." In the afternoon, while exploring the mountains again, the boys witnessed something disturbing. Large trucks transporting sophisticated equipment were climbing the winding roads, heading to different points of the mountain. Guardian growled softly as he saw the vehicles pass. Look at that, Ethan pointed to one of the trucks. Through the tarpaulin covering the cargo, it was possible to see the metallic gleam of machines that seemed to have come out of a science fiction movie. Oliver closed his eyes for a moment, concentrating. The animals are moving away from these places. They say the earth is crying where these machines touch. In her makeshift office, Lisa studied the data collected by her equipment. The graphs showed energy peaks that coincided exactly with the points marked on the map she had received from her financiers. Her team had already identified 3 possible crystal locations, but the strongest signal, the one that really interested the conglomerate, had not yet been located. "Dr. Carter," called one of her assistants, rushing into the room. "We detected an impressive energy anomaly yesterday afternoon. It was brief, but stronger than anything we've ever recorded." Lisa examined the new data with growing interest. The energy peak coincided exactly with the moment Ethan and Oliver were in the cave of the central crystal, although she didn't know that yet. As night fell, inexplicable phenomena began to happen throughout the town. Mysterious lights danced among the trees, and melodious sounds echoed through the mountains, as if the mountain itself was trying to communicate something. In Ethan's garden, plants grew and moved in impossible ways, responding to an ancient energy that was awakening. Guardian, sitting between Ethan and Oliver on the porch, observed the horizon with evident concern. The boys could feel that their protector knew more than he appeared to about what was to come. The dog turned his wise gaze to them, as if to say they needed to prepare for the challenges that awaited them. "We need to protect the crystals," Ethan said, his voice laden with determination. "But how are we going to do this alone?" Oliver smiled, placing his hand on his friend's shoulder. "We're not alone. We have Guardian, we have each other, and we have all of nature on our side." What they didn't know yet was that their journey as Guardians was just beginning, and that the true test of their strength and friendship was about to begin. The morning began with a surprising discovery in Ethan's backyard. The plants had grown extraordinarily during the night, forming patterns that resembled the inscriptions in the cave. Sarah watched in wonder as her son gently touched the leaves, making them glow with a soft light. "It's as if they're trying to tell us something," Ethan murmured, studying the natural symbols that were forming. Oliver, who had arrived early, concentrated on listening to the birds flying over the garden. "The animals in the mountains are restless," Oliver translated. "They say strangers are digging in sacred places. Places they should never touch." Guardian, who had been absent for part of the morning, returned with important information. The dog guided the boys to a higher area of the mountains from where they could see the operations of Lisa's team. Large tents had been set up at strategic points, and sophisticated equipment was being installed. "Look at that," Ethan whispered, pointing to one of the devices. The device emitted pulses of light that made the surrounding plants wither instantly. Oliver felt a wave of sadness coming from the nearby animals. As they watched, something extraordinary happened. Ethan, driven by a protective instinct, extended his hands towards the affected plants. To his surprise, a greenish energy flowed from his fingers, and the plants began to recover, coming back to life with even more vigor. "How did you do that?" Oliver asked, impressed. Before Ethan could answer, he felt a deep connection with all the plants in the region. It was as if he could see lines of vital energy connecting all the vegetation in the mountains. At the base camp, Lisa received a worrying video call. On the screen, a man with a severe expression pressured her. "Our investors are impatient, Dr. Carter. If we don't find the main crystal in a week, we'll have to take more assertive measures." Lisa ended the call with shaking hands. On her desk, a photo of her family reminded her of the reason she was there. "Forgive me," she whispered to the photograph, "but I have no choice." Back in the forest, Oliver discovered that his powers were also evolving. Not only did he understand the animals, but he could see through their eyes. Closing his eyes, he could see through the eagles soaring over the mountains, mentally mapping the location of all the research team's equipment. Guardian watched the boys' development with approval. The dog guided them to a small waterfall, where the water fell over partially exposed smaller crystals. As they approached, the crystals began to pulse in sync with their energies. "It's amazing!" Ethan exclaimed, touching the water. At the moment of contact, all the plants around the waterfall bloomed simultaneously, creating a spectacle of colors and light. Oliver, in turn, realized that he could communicate with aquatic animals, further expanding his connection with nature. In town, Sarah and Michael began to notice changes in the atmosphere. The climate, usually predictable in the region, showed inexplicable variations. Dark clouds formed and dissipated quickly, and gusts of wind seemed to carry messages in an ancient and forgotten language. In the afternoon, during another exploration, Ethan and Oliver found recent excavation marks near one of the points marked on the cave map. The soil was wounded, and the smaller crystals that had existed there had been removed. "We need to stop them from finding the others," Ethan said, determined. His hands glowed with green energy, and the surrounding plants responded to his command, covering the excavation marks and camouflaging other important points. Oliver agreed, closing his eyes to connect with the animals in the region. "I'll ask them to warn us about any suspicious movement. The birds will be our eyes and the land animals our guardians." Guardian, who was watching everything attentively, suddenly became alert. His golden eyes shone intensely, and he began to guide the boys along a new path. Something important was about to happen, and they needed to be prepared. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, when the boys made a discovery that would completely change the course of their mission. On the horizon, a new threat was forming, and their growing powers would be more necessary than ever. Twilight tinged the sky of Pinewood Valley when Ethan and Oliver, following Guardian, arrived at a clearing they had never seen before. In the center, a small lake reflected the last lights of the day, its crystal-clear waters emanating an energy different from anything they had ever felt. "Look," Oliver whispered, pointing to the bottom of the lake. Through the transparent waters, it was possible to see a crystal larger than the others, pulsing with its own light that constantly changed color. It was as if the crystal were alive, conversing with them through its hypnotic glow. Ethan knelt at the edge of the lake, his hands instinctively touching the water's surface. At the moment of contact, a wave of energy coursed through his entire body, and visions began to flow in his mind. He saw Emily, his biological mother, young and frightened, running through the mountains with a baby in her arms. He saw ancient gatherings of guardians, people with powers similar to his own, protecting the crystals through the centuries. "Oliver," he called, his voice trembling with the emotion of discovery, "I think I know why we were chosen. It wasn't a coincidence. This is in our blood. It's part of who we are." Meanwhile, at the base camp, Lisa faced her own moral dilemma. Her equipment had detected a powerful energy coming from the lake, stronger than any previous reading. On her screen, urgent emails from the conglomerate pressed for immediate results. "We found it, Mum," one of the technicians reported, showing the sensor readings. "It's the largest deposit of crystalline energy ever recorded in the region." Lisa looked at the photo of her family once more, her heart heavy with the choices she needed to make. In her mind, flashbacks of veiled threats and promises of protection for her loved ones mingled with the growing certainty that she was about to disturb something sacred. Back at the lake, Guardian began to act differently. The dog positioned himself between the boys, and his golden fur began to glow with supernatural intensity. To Ethan and Oliver's amazed eyes, Guardian's form began to transform, emanating a light that seemed to come from within. "You are ready to know the complete truth," a soft and ancient voice echoed in their minds, coming from Guardian. It wasn't a physical voice, but a direct communication with their consciousnesses. "I was designated to protect you from before your births. I am one of the ancient guardians of these mountains." The waters of the lake began to move in circular patterns, and from its center emerged a column of light that projected images in the air. Ethan and Oliver saw the complete history of the crystals, how they maintained the balance not only of the mountains but of the entire region, how their energy nourished life and protected the natural world. "The crystals are more than sources of energy," Guardian continued. "They are the anchoring points of the Earth's life force itself. If they are removed or destroyed, the balance will be irreversibly broken." Oliver, using his expanded gift, sensed a growing agitation among the forest animals. "They're coming," he warned, feeling the approach of vehicles and heavy equipment. "Dr. Carter's team has discovered this place." Ethan concentrated, and for the first time managed to feel the lines of energy that connected all the crystals in the mountains. It was a complex and delicate web, and the lake crystal was one of its main points of support. "We need to protect this place," Ethan declared, his hands beginning to glow with a green energy more intense than ever. The surrounding plants responded to his call, growing and intertwining, creating a natural barrier around the lake. Guardian nodded, his luminous form pulsing in sync with the energy of the submerged crystal. You are not alone in this mission. Others like you are awakening, and soon they will join our cause. The sun had completely set now, but the clearing was illuminated by the combined glow of Guardian, the crystal in the lake, and the energy emanating from the boys themselves. A new phase of their journey was beginning, and with it the true extent of their powers and responsibilities was beginning to reveal itself. The morning after the discovery of the lake, Ethan woke up with heightened sensitivity. Each plant, each leaf in his house's garden seemed to sing a unique song, creating a natural symphony that only he could hear. His room was covered with flowering vines that had grown during the night, responding to his dreams. Sarah, upon entering the room, stopped at the door, marveling at the transformation. "Ethan, son, did all this happen while you were sleeping?" The flowers emitted a soft glow, creating patterns that resembled constellations in the night sky. "Mom," Ethan began, sitting up in bed, "I think it's time to tell you the whole truth." His hands glowed softly as he spoke, and the plants responded to his every word, gently dancing. Meanwhile, at Oliver's house, a similar scene was unfolding. The boy discovered that he could not only understand animals, but also share their memories. Through the eyes of an old hawk, he saw images of the mountains decades ago, when the crystals were still all in their places, maintaining the perfect harmony of nature. Guardian appeared simultaneously in both places, his form now alternating between the familiar dog and the light creature that had revealed itself the night before. "It's time," his voice echoed in the boys' minds. "You need to learn to use your powers to their full extent." At the base camp, Lisa was preparing her team for an important operation. The equipment had been calibrated overnight, and the readings indicated that the crystal submerged in the lake was exactly what her financiers were looking for. "We'll begin extraction this afternoon," she announced, trying to ignore the weight in her heart. On her screen, another threatening message flashed. "Don't fail us, Dr. Carter. Your family depends on your success." In the mountains, Ethan and Oliver met in a clearing near the crystal-clear lake. Guardian, in his luminous form, began to instruct them on how to channel their energies more effectively. "Close your eyes," the ancient Guardian guided. "Feel the energy flowing through you. They're not separate powers. It's the same life force that runs through the entire mountain range." Ethan extended his hands, and for the first time, he could see the energy lines connecting all living things. It was like a golden and green web, pulsing with life. At his command, the plants not only grew but transformed, creating complex and beautiful structures. Oliver, in turn, discovered that he could project his consciousness through the forest animals. Eagles, wolves, and even small insects became his eyes and ears, creating a natural surveillance network throughout the mountains. "You are stronger together," Guardian explained. "Your gifts complement each other, just as all the forces of nature work in harmony." To demonstrate, he asked them to join hands. When they did, a wave of pure energy exploded around them. Plants grew instantly, forming a protective canopy, while animals of all species approached, attracted by the harmonious power emanating from the boys. "This is amazing," exclaimed Ethan, seeing how his connection with the plants was amplified when combined with Oliver's sensitivity to animals. But the joy of discovery was interrupted by an urgent alert. A small sparrow landed on Oliver's shoulder, transmitting worrying news. Large machines were being positioned around the lake. "They've started," Oliver translated, his expression serious. "They're preparing equipment to extract the crystal from the water." Guardian assumed his most imposing form, his glow intensifying. "The time has come to use everything you've learned. But remember, true strength lies not in power but in the wisdom of how to use it." The boys exchanged determined looks. Now that they understood their gifts better, they felt more prepared to protect the crystals. But they also knew they would face a challenge much greater than anything they had imagined. The sun was at its zenith when the first machines began to approach the sacred lake. Dr. Lisa Carter personally supervised the operation, checking monitors that displayed increasingly intense energy readings. Her team had surrounded the area with sophisticated equipment, preparing for the extraction of the submerged crystal. "Initiate the drainage procedure," she ordered, trying to keep her voice steady. Deep in her mind, the threats from the conglomerate echoed as a constant reminder of what was at stake. Ethan and Oliver watched everything hidden among the trees, their hearts beating fast. Guardian in his canine form remained beside them, his golden eyes shining with ancient wisdom. "We need to stop this," Ethan whispered, seeing the crystal-clear waters of the lake begin to stir with the operation of the pumps. His hands were already glowing with green energy, responding to his growing concern. Oliver closed his eyes, concentrating. "The animals are ready to help us. Even the smallest creatures in the forest understand what's at risk." Guardian transmitted a clear thought to both. "Remember, use your gifts wisely. Not to destroy, but to protect." Ethan was the first to act. Concentrating as he had learned, he extended his hands towards the vegetation surrounding the lake. Immediately, the plants responded to his call. Thick vines emerged from the ground, enveloping the pumping machines. Flowers bloomed instantly, their intense perfumes confusing the electronic sensors. "Something is interfering with the equipment," shouted one of the technicians, seeing the screens on his monitors fail. Oliver, in turn, coordinated a natural army. Squirrels descended from the trees in organized groups, gnawing on strategic cables. Birds flew in formation, creating shadows that prevented the proper functioning of the solar panels that powered part of the equipment. Lisa watched, astonished, as nature seemed to rebel against her operation. "This is impossible," she muttered, seeing her most powerful machines slowly being overtaken by vegetation. Then something even more extraordinary happened. The waters of the lake began to glow intensely, and the submerged crystal emitted a pulse of energy that caused all the electronic equipment in the area to fail completely. "Dr. Carter," called one of the assistants, pointing to the forest. Among the trees, two young figures stood out, their silhouettes enveloped in a glowing aura, green around Ethan, blue around Oliver. "They're just children," Lisa whispered, perplexed, as Ethan and Oliver advanced towards the lake. Guardian walked between them, his form alternating between the dog and the being of light. "You can't take the crystal from here," Ethan declared, his voice carrying a surprising authority for someone so young. "It maintains the balance of the entire mountain range," Oliver added. "The animals, the plants, all life depends on this energy. If you remove the crystal, you'll destroy much more than you imagine." Lisa stepped forward, her eyes meeting those of the boys. For a moment, she saw beyond their ages. She saw the ancient wisdom flowing through them, the deep connection they had with nature. "You don't understand," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "I have no choice. There are people, powerful people, who demand that I complete this mission." At that moment, the crystal in the lake emitted another pulse of energy, gentler this time. The light passed through everyone present, and for a brief instant, each person there could feel the web of life that connected everything in the mountains. From the smallest plants to the largest animals, from the streams to the peaks. The machines, completely jammed by vegetation and affected by the crystal's energy, began to smoke. The technicians backed away, confused and frightened by the inexplicable events. Guardian, assuming his complete luminous form, addressed Lisa directly. "Sometimes the true choice lies in having the courage to do what is right, not what is easy." After the confrontation at the lake, Lisa's team's base camp was in chaos. Damaged equipment smoked, covered by vegetation that seemed to have grown decades in just minutes. The technicians were still trying to understand what they had witnessed, while stories about two children with extraordinary powers began to circulate in whispers. Lisa locked herself in her trailer, ignoring dozens of missed calls on her cell phone. On the computer screen, urgent emails from the conglomerate demanded explanations for the equipment failure. Her hands trembled as she reread the last threat received. "Remember what's at stake, Dr. Carter. Your family depends on your success." At home, Ethan and Oliver tried to process everything that had happened. Sarah and Michael listened attentively as their son finally revealed the whole truth about his gifts and the mission to protect the mountain crystals. "So that's why Guardian brought you to us," Sarah whispered, tears in her eyes as she watched the dog they now knew was much more than a simple animal. "You've always been special, son, from the very first day." Guardian, maintaining his canine form so as not to alarm Sarah and Michael too much, approached and gently rested his head on Sarah's lap. His golden eyes conveyed a clear message of gratitude for having taken such good care of Ethan. Oliver, who had stayed for dinner, continued receiving information from the forest animals. "They're moving some equipment," he reported, "but many of the workers are too scared to return to the lake." The next morning, a surprising discovery awaited the boys. Upon returning to the lake, they found small crystals sprouting along the shores, as if the main crystal was multiplying in response to the threat. "It's incredible," exclaimed Ethan, observing how the plants around the new crystals grew more vibrant and brighter. "It's as if the mountain itself is defending itself." Guardian, briefly assuming his luminous form, explained, "The crystals are alive, in a way. They respond to the energy of their guardians and the needs of the land." Meanwhile, Lisa faced her own moral dilemma. The images from the previous day wouldn't leave her mind. The boy's deep connection with nature, the pure energy emanating from the crystal, the sense of harmony she had experienced during that brief moment of enlightenment. On her laptop, she opened a protected folder that held the true reasons for her mission. The conglomerate wasn't interested in sustainable energy. They wanted to exploit the power of the crystals for much less noble purposes. The simulations on her computer showed that removing the main crystal could cause a catastrophic imbalance in the entire ecosystem. "I can't do this," she murmured, closing the laptop. For the first time in a long time, Lisa felt a clarity she had long lost. In the mountains, Ethan and Oliver discovered that their powers continued to grow. The plants not only responded to Ethan's touch, now they seemed to anticipate his needs, creating natural paths and shelters wherever they went. Oliver in turn realized that he could not only communicate with animals, but share their abilities for brief moments, seeing in the dark like an owl, feeling vibrations in the ground like an armadillo. Guardian guided them to a new location in the mountains, where ancient inscriptions revealed more about the history of the crystals and their guardians. "You are not the first," he explained, "but you are perhaps the most important. The world is changing, and the connection between humanity and nature has never been so crucial." Late that afternoon, something unexpected happened. Lisa appeared alone at Ethan's house, without equipment or her usual team. Her eyes revealed sleepless nights and an important decision made. "We need to talk," she said to the boys, who watched her cautiously. "You need to know the whole truth about who's behind this, and why we need to work together to protect not just the crystals, but my family as well." In the living room of Ethan's house, Lisa revealed a story no one expected to hear. Sarah had prepared tea for everyone, while Guardian maintained his vigilant posture, his golden eyes fixed on the geologist. "My daughter Sophie is with them," Lisa began, her voice choked with emotion. "The conglomerate keeps her in a special school, they say, but in reality it's a way to control me. Every time I try to resist, they threaten to transfer her to a more distant place." Ethan and Oliver exchanged significant looks. For the first time, they saw beyond the determined scientist. They saw a desperate mother trying to protect her daughter. "Sophie is different too," Lisa continued, taking a photo from her pocket. In the image, a girl of about 12 smiled, surrounded by butterflies that seemed to dance around her. "She's always had a special gift with insects. That's what caught their attention." Guardian, who until then had maintained his canine form, partially transformed, his golden fur emitting a soft light. "There are others like you," his voice echoed in the minds of all present. "Special children, connected to different aspects of nature. The conglomerate has been searching for and monitoring these young people for years." Sarah, who had been listening in silence, approached Lisa. "Why didn't you tell us this before?" "Fear," replied the geologist, tears streaming down her face. "They have eyes and ears everywhere. But after seeing what happened at the lake, after feeling that connection, I realized I needed to make the right choice." Ethan approached Lisa, his hands emanating a soft green light. The houseplants responded immediately, flowers blooming in all the windows as if offering comfort. "We'll help you get your daughter back," he declared with surprising conviction for his age. Oliver closed his eyes for a moment, concentrating. "The animals can help us find her. Every insect, every bird can be our eyes." Guardian fully assumed his luminous form, illuminating the entire room. "This is the true battle we face. It's not just about protecting the crystals, but about preserving the sacred connection between the young guardians and nature." Lisa then revealed more details about the conglomerate. They weren't just seeking energy. They wanted to control and exploit the special gifts of children like Sophie, Ethan, and Oliver. The mountain crystals, were just part of a larger plan. They discovered that there are places like the Blue Ridge Mountains all over the world, she explained. Power points where the Earth's energy concentrates in crystals and where special children are born with unique gifts. As they talked, something extraordinary began to happen. The crystal that Ethan carried with him, a small fragment from the lake, began to pulse in sync with Lisa's emotions. The plants in the house grew and moved, forming patterns that resembled maps and constellations. Oliver suddenly stood up, his eyes wide. The animals, they're showing me something. There are other crystals manifesting in the mountains, as if they're responding to our joint purpose. Sarah, who observed everything with a mixture of awe and maternal concern, made a decision. Our house will be the meeting point. Here you can plan safely. Guardian approved with a nod, his glow intensifying. Your union is no coincidence. Each of you has a fundamental role in what's to come. The night advanced, and as they made plans, the mountains seemed to vibrate with renewed energy. The crystals scattered throughout the region glowed in unison, as if celebrating the new alliance that was forming. In the sky, clouds moved in unusual patterns, and the forest animals gathered around the house, mounting a natural guard. A new phase of the journey was beginning, one that would require not only courage but also compassion and unity. Ethan's house had transformed into an improvised operations center. Maps of the mountains covered the living room table, marked with glowing points where crystals had been located. Lisa secretly transferred part of her equipment there, now using it to track the mystical energies permeating the region. Sophie is in a facility in the southern mountains, Lisa explained, pointing to a location on the map. The conglomerate keeps other special children there, under the pretext of it being a school for gifted youngsters. Oliver was sitting in the garden, surrounded by different bird species. His eyes closed in deep concentration as he established a natural surveillance network. The animals confirm, he said, opening his eyes. There's strange movement in that area. Many guards, sophisticated equipment, and a different energy that scares the birds. Ethan, in turn, was discovering new aspects of his powers. Under Guardian's guidance, he had learned to create small living shelters, manipulating plants to form complex and camouflaged structures. We can use this to approach without being seen, he suggested, demonstrating how the vines responded to his command, creating natural tunnels. Sarah and Michael, though concerned, understood the importance of the mission. They transformed the house's basement into a hideout for Lisa's equipment and the smaller crystals they had managed to protect. The crystals are communicating with each other, Lisa observed, studying the readings on her monitors. It's as if they form a network of living energy, and each special child is part of that network. Guardian, alternating between his forms, shared ancient knowledge. Each Guardian's gifts are unique but complementary. Sophie, with her connection to insects, will be crucial for the balance. At night, an important discovery was made. Oliver, through the eyes of an owl, observed something intriguing at the facility where Sophie was. There are indoor gardens, he reported, full of plants and insects, as if they were studying the children's abilities. Ethan touched one of the smaller crystals, and immediately a vision filled his mind. Sophie, surrounded by luminous butterflies, using her gift to create flight patterns that interfered with the electronic equipment around her. She's resisting in her own way, Lisa smiled, pride and concern mixed in her voice. She's always been like that, since she was little. Using her insects to confuse security systems, create small chaos. During the preparation, each assumed a specific role. Sarah, with her nursing experience, prepared first aid kits. Michael, using his knowledge of topography, helped map out the best access routes. In a touching moment, Lisa shared an old video of Sophie on her tablet. In the recording, the girl played in a garden, and small lights, fireflies, danced around her, forming complex patterns in the air. The insects have always protected her, Lisa explained. Even before we understood her gift, they were there like microscopic guardians. Ethan and Oliver practiced intensely, honing their teamwork. They discovered that when they combined their powers, they could create protection zones where nature responded instantly to their commands. Guardian revealed more about the history of the crystals. They are not just sources of energy, they are guardians of Earth's memory. Each contains ancestral stories, knowledge that needs to be protected. As the night progressed, a plan began to take shape. It wouldn't just be a rescue, it would be a mission to protect all the special children and prevent the conglomerate from destroying the delicate balance between humanity and nature. Dawn had barely begun when Ethan, Oliver, and Lisa started their journey. Guardian led the way, his luminous form camouflaged by the characteristic mist of the Blue Ridge Mountains. Sarah and Michael remained at home, now transformed into a support center, monitoring the equipment adapted by Lisa. "Remember," Guardian's voice echoed in their minds, "each crystal you carry is not just a source of power, it's a fragment of the Earth's very soul." Ethan carried a small bag, where carefully selected crystals pulsed in sync with his heartbeat. Around him, the vegetation moved silently, creating safe paths and concealing their passages. Oliver maintained constant contact with his network of spy animals. Owls flew over the area, providing precise aerial views, while small rodents explored the surroundings of the facility, discovering hidden entrances and exits. "Sophie is awake," Oliver whispered, receiving information through a moth that had found a crack in the window of the girl's room. "She knows we're coming. The insects are already gathering around her." Lisa consulted the portable monitors she carried. The energy readings were different from anything she had ever seen. Not just the crystals, but the entire mountain range seemed to pulse with an ancient force awakening. As they approached the facility, they discovered something disturbing. Through the eyes of a hawk, Oliver saw trucks arriving with huge equipment. "They're preparing for something big," he warned. "They look like excavation machines." Ethan touched the ground, establishing a connection with the ancient roots of the trees. Images flowed through his mind. The conglomerate wasn't just planning to extract crystals from the mountains, but was digging deeply at various points across the country, seeking an ancient network of crystals that connected throughout the territory. "It's worse than we imagined," Lisa said, analyzing documents on her tablet. They discovered that the crystals form a kind of vital energy network. If they managed to extract key points of this network, the natural harmony of the entire continent would be affected, Guardian completed, his light pulsing with concern. As they advanced, Ethan and Oliver discovered they could use the crystals they carried to amplify their gifts. Plants responded with more strength to Ethan's command, creating not just camouflage, but true natural fortresses. Oliver could communicate with increasingly distant animals, expanding his surveillance network. Suddenly, an alert came through a small hummingbird. Intense movement at the facility's gates. Men in suits, carrying briefcases and sophisticated equipment, were entering hurriedly. "Those are the conglomerate executives," Lisa recognized, her face paling. "They only show up when something big is about to happen." Through the connection with the insects in Sophie's room, Oliver caught fragments of an important conversation. Plans to transfer all the special children to a new facility, away from the mountains and their crystals. They want to separate the young Guardians from their natural sources of power, Guardian understood. This way they can control and manipulate their gifts without interference from the crystal's energy. Ethan felt the plants around the facility responding to his presence. Small flowers began to sprout in the cracks of the concrete, and vines moved imperceptibly, preparing for the right moment. "Sophie is sending a message," Oliver suddenly announced, interpreting the flight pattern of some butterflies near her room's window. "She's not the only special child in there. There are at least 5 others, each with different gifts." Lisa programmed her equipment to map the vital energy of each child inside the facility. On the screen, colored points pulsed at different intensities, like stars in a terrestrial constellation. The night advanced, and with it the certainty that the confrontation would be bigger and more important than they had imagined. It wasn't just about rescuing Sophie. It was about protecting the future of all young Guardians and preserving the vital balance of the planet. The full moon illuminated the mountains when the plan went into action. Ethan, using his gift amplified by the crystals, commanded the plants to create a natural distraction. Vines began to envelop the facility's power generators, while night-blooming flowers released pollen that interfered with electronic sensors. Oliver coordinated a silent army of animals. Owls blocked security cameras, while small rodents strategically gnawed on important wires. Through the eyes of a hawk, he monitored every movement of the guards. "Sophie is ready," Oliver whispered, receiving signals from the insects surrounding the girl. "She's gathered all the other young people in her room. They're waiting for our signal." Lisa, monitoring her equipment, noticed something extraordinary. The children's energies, they're harmonizing. It's as if their gifts were naturally connecting. Guardian in his luminous form confirmed, just as the crystals form a vital energy network, the young Guardians are part of a sacred web of Earth's protection. Ethan approached one of the facility's walls, touching it gently. Immediately, the plants began to create a natural ladder camouflaged by darkness. At the same moment, a cloud of fireflies appeared, guiding the way to Sophie's window. Inside the room, 6 children were waiting. Sophie, with her dark hair and bright eyes, was surrounded by an aura of luminous insects. Beside her, each young Guardian manifested their unique gift. Marina, who could control water, kept a small fountain in constant motion. Lucas, with his connection to the wind, created air currents that confused the senses. Anna, who communicated with crystals, held a small fragment that pulsed in her hands. "You came," Sophie smiled, tears of joy in her eyes as she saw her mother. The butterflies around her danced in celebration, but the reunion was interrupted by an urgent alert. Through the animals, Oliver sensed movement on the lower floors. "They've discovered something. They're accelerating the transfer plans." Lisa quickly consulted her monitors. "They're turning on excavation machines at all the key points of the crystal network. If they manage to extract all of them at the same time, the vital energy network will be broken," Guardian completed, his light pulsing with concern. Then something unexpected happened. When all the young Guardians gathered in a circle, their gifts began to resonate in harmony. The crystal Anna held glowed intensely, establishing a connection with all the other crystals in the mountains. Ethan felt the plants of the entire region responding to his call with renewed strength. Oliver realized he could communicate with increasingly distant animals. Sophie commanded entire swarms of insects with impressive precision. Marina made water dance in complex patterns, while Lucas controlled the very air around him. "This is it," exclaimed Guardian. "Together, you can awaken the true power of the crystals. The energy that the conglomerate tries to control and exploit can only be truly activated through the harmonious union of the Guardians." The moon shone even brighter over the mountains, as if the sky itself celebrated the union of the young protectors of nature. A new phase of the battle was about to begin, one that would require the strength and unity of all the Guardians. The moment of action came when alarms began to sound throughout the facility. The young Guardians, united in a circle, felt the energy of the crystals flowing through them like never before. The moonlight entering through the window seemed to dance with the energy emanating from the group. "They're initiating excavations at all points," Lisa warned, her eyes fixed on the monitor readings. "We have less than an hour before they start extracting the main crystals." Ethan, now connected not only to the mountain plants, but to the entire living network of vegetation, closed his eyes in deep concentration. "I can feel the earth is screaming at the excavation points." Oliver expanded his consciousness through the animals, creating a network of alerts and protection that extended for miles. "The animals are responding to our call, from the smallest ants to the largest birds of prey." Sophie, with a determined gleam in her eyes, commanded swarms of insects that began to interfere with all the electronic equipment in the facility. "They won't separate us again," she declared, as fireflies and night butterflies created hypnotic patterns in the air. Marina raised her hands, and all the moisture in the air responded to her command, forming a protective mist around the group. Lucas, controlling the air currents, ensured that the mist remained exactly where they needed it. Anna, still holding the main crystal, felt a deep connection form. The crystals, they're singing. They're showing us how to unite them again. Guardian, his luminous form brighter than ever, shared an ancient knowledge. The true strength of the crystals was never in their raw power, but in the harmony they create when connected through the pure hearts of their guardians. The moment the excavation machines began to function, the young people united their gifts in an extraordinary demonstration of natural power. Ethan brought forth an instant forest inside and around the facility, the plants responding with strength, multiplied by the Guardians' union. Sophie's insects formed impenetrable barriers, interfering with every electronic device. The water commanded by Marina and the wind controlled by Lucas created a localized storm that paralyzed the excavation operations. Oliver coordinated a joint effort of all the creatures in the mountains, from the smallest to the largest, creating a wave of natural protection that spread to all threatened points. "It's working!" exclaimed Lisa, seeing the energy signals from the crystals stabilize on her monitors. The network is strengthening instead of breaking. Anna, in a moment of deep connection with the crystals, began to intone an ancient chant, a melody that seemed to come from the earth itself. The other young people instinctively joined the chant, their voices harmonizing with the energy of the crystals. Guardian watched with approval as a wave of pure energy emanated from the group, restoring the natural balance wherever it touched. The conglomerate's machines, one after another, began to fail and shut down. The conglomerate executives, confronted with the overwhelming power of unified nature, began to retreat. Their plans for control and exploitation crumbled in the face of the united force between the young Guardians and the Earth's crystals. Dawn found the Blue Ridge Mountains transformed. Where there had been machines and excavation equipment, now grew a vibrant and living forest. The young Guardians, still united in a circle, maintained a deep connection with the crystals and the entire vital energy network of the Earth. Lisa watched in amazement as the monitors on her tablet showed something extraordinary. The crystal network wasn't just defending itself, it was strengthening. New energy points appeared on the map, like stars being born in a terrestrial constellation. "Look," called Sophie, pointing to the horizon. Thousands of butterflies were arriving from all directions, their wings creating a spectacle of colors in the morning sky. Each insect carried a small portion of crystalline energy, contributing to the restoration of the natural network. Ethan felt the plants transmit an ancient message through their roots. The earth never forgets those who protect it. At his command, rare flowers long considered extinct began to sprout, bringing back colors that the mountains hadn't seen for generations. Oliver, through his connection with the animals, perceived a profound change in the behavior of all creatures. "They're not just helping us anymore," he explained. "They're celebrating. It's as if they knew something important has been restored." Marina and Lucas worked in harmony, using water and wind to create a perfect microclimate that helped regenerate areas affected by the excavations. Anna, still holding her crystal, served as an anchor point for all the energy flowing through the group. It was then that Guardian revealed something surprising. "Observe Lisa," his voice echoed in everyone's mind. The geologist was enveloped in a soft aura, and small crystals began to sprout naturally around her. "Mom," Sophie exclaimed with joy, "you're a Guardian too. You always were, you just didn't know it yet." Lisa felt tears roll down her face as a long-forgotten truth awakened in her heart. Her hands, once used to study and try to control the crystals, could now feel their vital energy, understand their ancient language. The conglomerate executives, who observed everything from a distance, began to receive urgent calls from other parts of the country. At each location where they had tried to extract crystals, similar phenomena were happening. Young Guardians were awakening, joining the natural protection network. "You don't understand," one of the executives tried to explain over the phone. "It's not just a group of children with powers, it's the Earth itself defending through them." Guardian, his luminous form brighter than ever, shared a vision with all present. Other groups of Guardians awakening in different parts of the world, each protecting their own crystals, their own connections to the planet's vital energy. "This is just the beginning," he announced. "The Earth is calling its protectors back. The time of awakening has come." Sophie hugged her mother while butterflies danced around them. Ethan and Oliver smiled, feeling that their friendship had been just the first step of something much greater. Marina, Lucas, and Anna joined the hug, understanding that fate had united them for a reason greater than themselves. The Blue Ridge Mountains shone under the light of the rising sun, their crystals pulsing in harmony with the hearts of the young Guardians. A new era was beginning, one in which the connection between humanity and nature would be restored through the pure hands of those chosen to protect it. In the weeks that followed the Great Transformation, Pinewood Valley witnessed extraordinary changes. Ethan's house, once a simple meeting point, became a natural training center for young Guardians. The garden, now magically expanded, housed rare plant species and served as a sanctuary for animals of all kinds. Sarah and Michael lovingly adapted to their expanded family. Sophie came to live with them, along with her mother Lisa, who now used her scientific knowledge to document and better understand the crystal network they had protected. "It's amazing," Lisa commented as she studied the new energy patterns. "Each crystal we tried to protect generated dozens of others. It's as if the Earth is creating its own safety net. Ethan and Oliver remained inseparable, but now led a larger group. Marina, with her gift over water, created natural springs throughout the mountains, purifying and revitalizing water resources. Lucas used his control over the air to maintain climate balance, protecting the region from sudden temperature changes. Anna discovered that her gift with crystals went beyond communication. She could help them grow and multiply, further strengthening the vital energy network. Sophie, in turn, established a communication network through insects, keeping all the Guardians connected. Guardian, still alternating between his forms, brought encouraging news. Other groups are forming. From the Amazon to the Andes, young Guardians are awakening. Each region has its own crystals, its own natural gifts. The conglomerate's attempts to control and exploit the crystals were completely frustrated. Their equipment, even the most advanced, simply stopped working when approaching the protected areas. Nature had created its own defense through the union of the Guardians. "Look at this," Oliver called one afternoon, interpreting messages brought by a traveling falcon. "There's a group of Guardians forming in the Everglades. They have different gifts from ours adapted to their environment." Ethan, walking through the expanded garden, realized how each plant now told a story. "It's as if each leaf, each flower, was part of a living book," he explained, as rare flowers bloomed at his touch. Lisa, who could now see and understand the energy of the crystals, began to create a new type of scientific study, one that respected and celebrated the sacred connection between the Guardians and nature. Her work attracted conscious researchers from around the world, transforming Pinewood Valley into a center for natural studies. Sophie, surrounded by her messenger butterflies, spent hours teaching the new Guardians who arrived. "Each insect has its own wisdom," she explained. "We just need to learn to listen." The most surprising thing was how the entire town had transformed. The residents, witnesses to the power of nature in harmony, began to change their habits. Gardens sprouted in every backyard, wildlife was respected and protected, and the mountains once again pulsed with the vital energy they always should have had. One afternoon, as the group rested after a training session, Guardians shared an ancient vision. There was a time when all of humanity lived in harmony with nature. What you are doing is not new. It's a reconnection with a wisdom that has always existed. The words of the ancient Guardian echoed deeply in each of them. They were not just protectors of the crystals, they were a bridge between the old and the new, guiding humanity back to the path of balance with nature. A year passed since the great transformation of the Blue Ridge Mountains. Ethan's garden, now a vast natural sanctuary, received visitors from all corners of the world. Young Guardians discovering their gifts, scientists interested in studying the harmony between humans and nature, and ordinary people attracted by the unique energy of the place. On a special spring afternoon, Ethan and his friends gathered in the clearing of the Crystal Lake, where everything had begun. The place was even more magical. Natural crystals sprouted everywhere, rare flowers covered every surface, and animals of all species lived together in peace. "Remember our first meeting here?" Oliver asked, as an owl gently landed on his shoulder. "It seems like it was in another life." Sophie, surrounded by her faithful butterflies, smiled. "And now we're a much larger family." She looked fondly at her mother, Lisa, who had become a vital bridge between the scientific world and the Guardians of nature. Lisa, who now coordinated a center for natural studies, used her own experience to help other scientists understand the importance of balance between progress and preservation. "Each discovery shows us that we still have so much to learn from nature," she reflected. Marina created a small fountain with a movement of her hands, while Lucas made the wind dance gently among the trees. Anna, sitting close to the main crystal in the lake, perceived how the vital energy network had strengthened and expanded. Guardian, in his luminous form, shared important news. The awakening has spread throughout the planet. Each region, each ecosystem now has its protectors. The Earth is regaining its balance, one Guardian at a time. Sarah and Michael watched the scene with pride and gratitude. Their garden, once a simple backyard, had become the epicenter of a global transformation. "Sometimes I wonder if that misty night, when Guardian brought Ethan to us, was really by chance," Sarah whispered. "Nothing is by chance when it comes to the wisdom of nature," Guardian replied, his golden eyes shining with ancient knowledge. Ethan, gently touching one of the century-old trees, felt all the history of the mountains flowing through it. "Each of us is part of something bigger," he said. "Every person has the potential to reconnect with nature, to make a difference." And so, under the sky of Pinewood Valley, the Guardians understood that their mission was just beginning. Every day, more people awakened to the importance of protecting and preserving nature. Each small gesture, each act of consciousness, contributed to strengthening this vital network that connected all living beings. True power, Guardian concluded, lies in the ability to inspire others to find their own connection with nature. And you, who have accompanied us on this journey, are also part of this story. For in each of us, there is the seed of a Guardian waiting to awaken. If this narrative has touched your heart, share it with others. Subscribe to our channel to learn more stories that celebrate the connection between humanity and nature. Leave your like as a symbol that you too are part of this network of protection for our planet. For, as the young Guardians discovered, every small gesture of consciousness and love for nature strengthens the vital web that unites us all. The next story of transformation may begin with you.